They laughed when I told them what I did for a living. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle. A real, genuine laugh that echoed across my uncle's dining room and made my face burn hot with shame. My cousin Tyler slapped the table so hard his wine glass nearly tipped over. His wife Kelly covered her mouth, trying to hide her grin but failing completely. "Seriously? That's what you're doing with your life?" Tyler asked, wiping tears from his eyes. "A janitor? At your age?" I was 28 years old. I had a college degree gathering dust in a drawer somewhere. But life had taken unexpected turns, and here I was, working the night shift as a sanitation engineer at various commercial buildings downtown. The pay wasn't terrible. The hours were lonely. The work was exactly what everyone thought it was. "It's honest work," I said quietly, cutting into my steak. "Honest work," my Uncle Bradley repeated, shaking his head. "Your father would be so disappointed, Marcus." My father had passed away 3 years earlier. Before that, he'd built a small empire in commercial real estate with Uncle Bradley. They'd started with nothing and created something that supported our entire extended family. Bradley now ran everything, and everyone else had comfortable positions in the company. Everyone except me. I'd made different choices. Choices that led me here, to this dinner table, being judged by people who'd never scrubbed a floor in their lives. My mother Patricia sat across from me, her face tight with disappointment. She hadn't spoken to me directly in 20 minutes. Instead, she addressed everyone around me, talking as if I wasn't there at all. It was her special talent, making people feel invisible without saying a single cruel word. "Marcus was always so smart," she said to Kelly. "Straight A's through high school. We thought he'd join Bradley at the company. We had plans for him." "Plans change," I said softly. "They certainly do," my older brother Andrew muttered. He was vice president of operations at Brennan Holdings, our family company. At 32, he wore expensive suits and drove a car that cost more than most people made in 2 years. He'd never let me forget that he was the successful one, the son who'd made the right choices. The dinner continued with more stories about deals and investments and opportunities. They talked about office politics and client meetings and vacations to places I'd never been. And every so often, someone would glance at me and smirk as if to say, "See what you're missing?" I ate my food and stayed quiet. That seemed to bother them more than anything I could have said. They wanted me to defend myself, to argue, to show some spark of ambition or regret. But I gave them nothing. Just silence and a small smile that drove them crazy. Hello everyone, and thank you for being here. Before the story continues, take a second to tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I truly enjoy seeing how far these stories travel and hearing from you directly. One important note, some elements in this story have been fictionalized for educational and storytelling purposes, and any resemblance to real people or settings is coincidental. That said, the message I'm sharing is meaningful, and I hope it speaks to you. After dinner, I helped clear the table. It was automatic for me now, cleaning up after others. Uncle Bradley stopped me in the kitchen, his hand on my shoulder. He smelled like expensive cologne and whiskey. "Marcus," he said, his voice lower now, almost kind, "this doesn't have to be permanent. I could find you something at the company. Start you in the mailroom, work your way up properly this time." I tried working at Brennan Holdings right after college. It had lasted 8 months before I'd quit. The culture there was toxic, built on family loyalty instead of competence. People got promoted because of their last name, not their abilities. I'd watched Andrew climb the ladder not because he was talented, but because he was Bradley's nephew and he knew how to play the game. "I appreciate it, Uncle Bradley," I said. "But I'm fine where I am." His expression hardened. "Fine? You're cleaning toilets, Marcus. That's not fine. That's pathetic." I nodded slowly and finished stacking the plates. He walked away shaking his head, muttering something about wasted potential. My cousin Tyler appeared in the doorway, grinning like he'd won something. "Hey, Marcus," he said. "Make sure you get under the rim, right? That's where the real dirt hides." Everyone within earshot laughed. I smiled and kept working. The jokes followed me everywhere after that night. At my grandmother's birthday party, Andrew made a show of checking if his hands were clean before shaking mine. At Christmas, Kelly gave me a bottle of industrial soap as a gag gift. At Easter dinner, Tyler asked if I'd washed up before touching the food. Each time, I smiled and let it go. But something else was happening too. Something they didn't notice because they were too busy laughing. My job was teaching me things. Important things. I worked in their buildings. I cleaned their offices. I had access to spaces they'd forgotten existed. Basements. Storage rooms. Server closets. Archive areas. Places where companies kept their secrets locked away from the world above. I worked at Brennan Holdings twice a week, contracted through an external cleaning service. Nobody paid attention to me there. I was furniture. Background noise. The invisible man who emptied trash cans and mopped floors while they had their important meetings. They talked freely around me, discussing deals and strategies and problems they needed to solve. They never considered that I might be listening. That I might be remembering. That I might be understanding exactly what they were saying. One night, I found something interesting. A locked storage room in the basement that wasn't on any floor plan or directory. The room had been hidden behind old filing cabinets that nobody had moved in years. I'd only discovered it because I'd been asked to deep clean the basement archives, a job nobody else wanted to do. The door was solid steel with a combination lock that looked newer than everything else down there. Someone had tried to make it blend in, but the fresh paint gave it away. I didn't try to open it. I just noted its location and went back to work. But I thought about it. I thought about it a lot. Why would a room exist that wasn't marked on any official building documents? What could be inside that needed to be hidden so carefully? And why was the lock so new when everything around it was decades old? 2 weeks later, I was working late when I saw Andrew and Uncle Bradley go down to the basement together. They were carrying boxes. Heavy ones, judging by how they struggled. I watched from the stairwell, keeping myself hidden in the shadows. They went straight to that locked room. Bradley worked the combination, and they disappeared inside for 20 minutes. When they came out, the boxes were gone. I waited until their footsteps faded completely before I went down to investigate. The lock was still secure. The door showed no signs of forced entry. But now I knew something important. My family was hiding something in that room, and they were actively adding to whatever was inside. My job gave me tools most people didn't have. Keys to maintenance areas. Access to utility corridors. Passwords to cleaning staff systems that tracked building operations. Nobody thought twice about the janitor checking supply closets or measuring rooms for equipment. I was supposed to be there. I belonged to the building's invisible infrastructure. I started mapping the basement. Every room. Every corridor. Every utility chase and mechanical space. I did it slowly, carefully, during my normal work shifts so nobody would question what I was doing. The locked room sat at the center of my map like a dark spot that didn't quite make sense. According to the building's official blueprints filed with the city, that space didn't exist. Someone had remodeled the basement years ago and created a room that had no legal record. That was interesting. Very interesting. It suggested planning. Intention. A desire to keep something completely off the books. I wondered what my family had done that required this level of secrecy. I wondered if I really wanted to know. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and I'd never been good at leaving mysteries alone. I began watching more carefully. I noted when people went to the basement and who they were. I tracked patterns. Andrew went down every Tuesday and Thursday evening after most staff had left. Uncle Bradley joined him on Thursdays. Sometimes Tyler came too, though less frequently. My supervisor at the cleaning company was a man named Harold Bennett, a 50-year-old veteran who'd been in the janitorial business for 30 years. He was thorough, professional, and deeply suspicious of anything that seemed out of place. He'd taught me that cleaning wasn't just about making things look nice. It was about understanding spaces, noticing changes, recognizing when something didn't fit the pattern. You see things other people miss, he told me one night while we were restocking supplies. That's a valuable skill, Marcus. Don't waste it. Harold had no idea how seriously I was taking his advice. I'd started keeping detailed notes about everything I observed at Brennan Holdings. Times, dates, people, movements, changes to the space. It probably seemed paranoid, but something in my gut told me this information would matter eventually. Some instinct I couldn't explain said that my family's secrets would come to light, and when they did, I needed to be ready. The jokes continued. Every family gathering brought new comments about my dirty job and my lack of ambition. My mother stopped inviting me to smaller events, embarrassed to explain to her friends what her youngest son did for a living. Andrew made sure everyone knew I'd failed where he'd succeeded. Uncle Bradley looked at me with disappointment every time our paths crossed. I absorbed it all and kept working, kept watching, kept learning. 6 months after I discovered the locked room, things began to change. Small things at first. Uncle Bradley seemed stressed in a way I'd never seen before. He snapped at assistants. He took phone calls in private and emerged looking pale. Andrew started working longer hours, staying at the office until midnight some nights. Tyler stopped making jokes. He looked worried instead. I heard fragments of conversations while I worked. Words like audit and compliance and investigation floated through the air. Someone had questions about Brennan Holdings' financial records. Someone with authority was asking to see documentation that apparently didn't exist or didn't match up with what had been reported. My family was scrambling to find answers before those questions became demands. One Thursday night, I watched Andrew and Bradley make 3 trips to the basement, carrying boxes back up instead of down. They were moving things out of that locked room. Destroying evidence, maybe. Or hiding it somewhere new. They looked panicked, working quickly, constantly checking over their shoulders. I stayed hidden in the maintenance corridor, watching through a crack in a door they'd never noticed. After they left, I went down to check the room. The door was slightly ajar for the first time since I'd discovered it. Inside, I could see empty shelves and filing cabinets. They'd cleared it out completely. Whatever had been hidden there was gone now. Harold called me into his office the next morning. He looked serious, which was unusual. Harold was normally relaxed and easygoing, the kind of boss who treated his employees like adults and trusted them to do their jobs well. "Marcus," he said, gesturing to a chair. "We need to talk about something important." I sat down, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Maybe someone had noticed me watching too carefully. Maybe my family had complained. But Harold's expression wasn't angry. It was concerned and careful, like he was about to share information that could cause problems. "I've been in this business a long time," he continued. "And I've learned that cleaners see things. We're invisible to most people, so they act like we're not there. They do things and say things they shouldn't, right in front of us. You understand what I'm saying?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "I need to know something," Harold said, leaning forward. "In your time at Brennan Holdings, have you seen anything unusual? Anything that didn't seem right or made you uncomfortable? I'm asking because I got a call yesterday from someone doing an investigation, and they specifically asked about our cleaning staff. About whether we keep records of what we observe in the buildings we service." My heart rate picked up. This was it. Whatever my family had been hiding, it was coming to light now. The authorities were involved. They were asking questions. And somehow, they knew that people like Harold and me might have seen things that mattered. "I keep notes," I said carefully. "About my work. Times I arrive and leave. Areas I clean. Unusual maintenance issues. Things like that." Harold studied my face for a long moment. "That's good. That's professional." The investigator said they might want to talk to you directly. "Would you be comfortable with that?" I thought about my family. About years of jokes and condescension and being treated like I was worthless. I thought about my mother's disappointment and Andrew's smugness and Uncle Bradley's pity. I thought about that locked room in the basement and the boxes they'd moved in such a panic. I thought about my father, who'd built something honest and good, only to have it corrupted by people who cared more about money than integrity. "Yes," I said. "I'd be comfortable with that." Harold nodded. "They'll probably contact you within the next few days. Be honest. Tell them what you've seen. That's all you can do." I left his office knowing that everything was about to change. I went home and reviewed my notes, making sure every detail was accurate and clear. Dates, times, names, observations. I documented 6 months of activity at Brennan Holdings without even realizing why I was doing it. Now it all made sense. Some part of me had known this moment was coming. Some instinct had told me to pay attention and remember. 3 days later, I received a call from an investigator named Special Agent Victoria Cross with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Agent Cross was professional and direct. She explained that the FBI was investigating Brennan Holdings for potential fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. They had evidence suggesting the company had been hiding assets and manipulating financial records for at least 5 years. She wanted to know what I'd observed during my time working in their building. We met at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, somewhere my family would never go. Agent Cross was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had a partner with her, Agent Thomas Wayne, who took notes while she asked questions. I told them everything. About the locked room. About the boxes. About the conversations I'd overheard. About Andrew and Bradley's panic when the audit started. About the night they'd cleared out the hidden storage space. You took notes? Agent Cross asked, her interest clearly piqued. I showed her my notebook. Months of careful documentation. She photographed every page, her expression growing more satisfied with each image. This was exactly what she needed. Proof that someone had witnessed the activity. Corroboration for whatever evidence they'd already gathered. A timeline that matched their investigation. Marcus, she said when we'd finished, you might be called to testify about what you've observed. Are you prepared for that? Your family will know you've been talking to us. I thought about that dinner at Uncle Bradley's house. About Tyler's laugh. About my mother's cold silence. About Andrew's constant reminders that I was a failure. About being called pathetic for choosing honest work over corrupt success. I'm prepared, I said. The investigation accelerated quickly after that. Within 2 weeks, federal agents executed search warrants at Brennan Holdings and at Uncle Bradley's home. They seized computers, files, and financial records. The local news covered it extensively. Prominent real estate family under federal investigation, the headlines read. My phone exploded with messages from relatives demanding to know what was happening, as if I had any more information than they did. I didn't respond to any of them. I went to work. I cleaned buildings. I kept my head down and waited to see what would happen next. Harold told me the FBI had contacted him too, asking about company policies and record-keeping procedures. He'd given them everything they requested, including my employment records and performance reviews. You're a good worker, he'd told them. Thorough and observant. If Marcus says he saw something, I believe him. My family tried to contact me directly. Andrew called 6 times before giving up. Uncle Bradley left a voicemail asking me to meet him, his voice tight with stress. Even my mother reached out, suddenly remembering she had a younger son after months of treating me like an embarrassment. I ignored them all. I had nothing to say to them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The FBI found the room. They'd used my notes to locate the space that didn't exist on official blueprints, and they'd brought in specialists to open the lock without destroying evidence. Inside, they discovered filing cabinets full of documents that Bradley and Andrew had missed in their panicked clearing operation. Agent Cross called to tell me what they'd found. Financial records going back 8 years, she said. Fake invoices. Shell company paperwork. Property deeds for assets that were never reported to the IRS. It's exactly what we needed to prove the pattern of fraud. Your cousin and uncle tried to hide everything, but they didn't do a thorough enough job. They left behind the evidence that's going to bury them. What happens now? I asked. Now we build the case. We'll need you to testify in front of a grand jury about what you observed. After that, if they're indicted, there will be a trial. This is going to take months, possibly over a year. Are you still willing to cooperate? I thought about my father. About the company he'd built with integrity and hard work. About how it had been twisted into something criminal by people who were supposed to protect his legacy. I thought about all the employees at Brennan Holdings who had no idea they were working for criminals. I thought about the investors and clients who'd been lied to and cheated. Yes, I said. I'm willing. The grand jury hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, my family finally stopped pretending I didn't exist. They demanded I talk to them. Andrew showed up at my apartment building, banging on my door until a neighbor threatened to call the police. Uncle Bradley had his lawyer contact me with threats about family loyalty and consequences. Tyler sent me angry texts accusing me of betrayal. My mother was the worst. She came to my workplace, embarrassing me in front of Harold and the other cleaners. "How could you do this to your own family?" my mother demanded, her voice shaking with anger and tears. "Your father would be ashamed of you, Marcus. Ashamed. These are lies. Bradley would never do what they're accusing him of. And Andrew, he's your brother. How dare you help the government destroy him?" We were standing in the parking lot behind the building where I'd just finished my shift. The sun was coming up, painting the sky pink and orange. My mother looked older than I remembered, worn down by stress and the scandal that had consumed our family. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered every dismissive comment, every disappointed look, every time she'd treated me like I was worthless for choosing a path different from the one she'd wanted. "I didn't destroy anyone," I said quietly. "I just told the truth about what I saw." "The truth?" she spat. "You're a janitor, Marcus. You clean floors. You don't understand business or how complex these things are. You've taken something innocent and made it look criminal because you're jealous of your brother's success." "Is that what you think?" I asked. "That I'm jealous? What else could it be? You've always resented Andrew. You've always been bitter about not being important at the company. So now you're destroying it to make yourself feel better. You're destroying your own family out of petty jealousy." I looked at her for a long moment. "I found a room full of fake financial documents, Mom. I watched them hide evidence when they knew an investigation was coming. That's not complex business. That's crime. And I'm not going to lie to protect people who broke the law." She slapped me. Hard. Across the face. "You ungrateful, selfish child." Harold had seen the whole thing from the office window. He came out immediately, positioning himself between me and my mother. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you need to leave now. This is private property, and you're not welcome here." My mother looked at him with contempt. "This doesn't concern you. This is between me and my son." "Your son is my employee," Harold replied. "And you just assaulted him. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." She stared at me one more time, her face twisted with anger and disappointment. Then she turned and walked to her car, her heels clicking against the pavement. I watched her drive away, knowing that was probably the last conversation we'd ever have. Harold put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. My cheek was burning where she'd hit me, but I nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay." "Family can be complicated," Harold said. "But you're doing the right thing. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The grand jury hearing went exactly as Agent Cross had predicted. I testified about everything I'd observed over 6 months of working at Brennan Holdings. I showed them my notes. I explained the locked room and the boxes and the panic when the investigation started. The jury asked questions, and I answered honestly. 3 days later, they handed down indictments against Uncle Bradley, Andrew, and Tyler. 15 counts of fraud. 8 counts of money laundering. 5 counts of tax evasion. The charges were serious. If convicted, they faced decades in prison. The trial was set for 8 months later. Until then, my family remained free on bail. The months between the indictment and the trial were strange. My family stopped contacting me entirely. I became a ghost to them, someone who'd never existed. I heard through distant relatives that Andrew had hired expensive lawyers. That Uncle Bradley had mortgaged everything to pay legal fees. That my mother had moved in with her sister because she couldn't afford her house anymore. The company was collapsing. Clients were leaving. Employees were finding new jobs. The Brennan name, once respected in our city, had become synonymous with corruption. I felt no satisfaction in any of it. I'd told the truth, yes. But I hadn't wanted to destroy everything my father had built. I just wanted the people who'd corrupted his legacy to face consequences for their actions. The collateral damage was unfortunate but unavoidable. Sometimes truth burns everything down before something better can grow in its place. I kept working. I got promoted to shift supervisor, managing a small team of cleaners across 3 buildings. Harold said I deserved it, that I'd proven myself reliable and observant and trustworthy. The raise helped me save money and move to a better apartment. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something. My own life. My own success. Based on my own choices rather than family connections or inherited opportunities. Agent Cross checked in regularly, preparing me for trial testimony. She explained courtroom procedures and what questions to expect. She warned me that the defense lawyers would try to make me look unreliable or bitter or motivated by jealousy, just like my mother had accused. Stick to the facts, she said. Don't let them rattle you. Just tell the truth. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters and spectators. I sat in the waiting area, dressed in the nicest clothes I owned, which still weren't as nice as the suits Andrew and Tyler wore. They sat at the defense table with their lawyers, looking confident and unbothered. Uncle Bradley sat separately with his own legal team. None of them looked at me. I was called to testify on the second day. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Assistant U.S. Attorney Melissa Harper, walked me through my observations carefully and methodically. Where I worked. What I saw. When I saw it. How I documented everything. She showed the jury my notebooks, my maps of the basement, my timeline of Andrew and Bradley's visits to the locked room. She made it clear I was simply a witness who'd done his job and noticed things that didn't make sense. Then came cross-examination. Andrew's lawyer was a tall man with silver hair and a condescending smile. He tried to suggest I was a disgruntled family member seeking revenge. Isn't it true, Mr. Brennan, that you resented your brother's success? That you were bitter about not being given a position at the family company? No, I said calmly. That's not true. But you worked there briefly after college and quit, correct? Because you couldn't handle the pressure. I quit because I disagreed with how the company was being run. I saw ethical problems and chose not to be part of them. The lawyer smirked. Ethical problems? Or were you simply not competent enough to succeed in a competitive business environment? Isn't that why you're now working as a janitor? Agent Cross had warned me about this. They would try to make my job sound shameful. Make me defensive. But I'd learned something important over the past year. I work as a sanitation engineer, I said clearly. It's honest work that pays my bills and lets me sleep at night. I don't consider that shameful. The lawyer pressed harder. But surely you must feel some resentment, seeing your brother and uncle succeed while you struggle. Isn't that what motivated you to fabricate this story about hidden rooms and secret documents? I didn't fabricate anything, I replied. The FBI found exactly what I described. The room exists. The documents exist. I simply reported what I observed. Convenient that you were in a position to observe these things, isn't it? Almost as if you were looking for something to use against your family. I was doing my job. I clean buildings. That requires me to access all areas of those buildings. I can't help what I see while I'm working. The lawyer tried several more angles, but I stayed calm and consistent. Every question, I answered with simple facts. No emotion. No embellishment. Just the truth. After 40 minutes, he gave up. I could see frustration in his face. He'd expected me to crack, to show anger or bitterness or shame. Instead, I'd given him nothing to work with. The trial continued for 6 more weeks. The prosecution presented mountains of evidence. Financial experts testified about the fake invoices and shell companies. IRS agents explained the tax evasion schemes. FBI forensic accountants walked through the paper trail showing how money had been hidden and moved. Other employees from Brennan Holdings testified about suspicious activities they'd witnessed but been afraid to report. Finally, it went to the jury. The verdict came back after 3 days of deliberation. Guilty on all counts for Uncle Bradley. Guilty on 14 of 15 counts for Andrew. Guilty on 10 of 15 counts for Tyler. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and gasps. I sat in the back row, watching my family's faces as the verdict was read. Bradley looked pale and defeated. Andrew's jaw clenched tight with rage. Tyler actually cried. They were remanded into custody immediately. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks later. As federal marshals led them away in handcuffs, Andrew finally looked at me. His expression held pure hatred. He mouthed something I couldn't quite make out, but the meaning was clear enough. He blamed me for everything. In his mind, I was the villain of this story. I left the courthouse through a side exit, avoiding reporters and cameras. Agent Cross found me in the parking lot. "You did well," she said. "Your testimony was crucial to the conviction. Without your observations and documentation, we might not have found that room or understood the full scope of their operation." "What happens now?" I asked. "Sentencing in 6 weeks. Bradley is looking at 15 to 20 years. Andrew probably 12 to 15. Tyler might get 8 to 10. They'll appeal, of course, but with a conviction this solid, they won't succeed. It's over, Marcus. You helped bring criminals to justice, even though they were your family. That took courage." I drove home thinking about courage. About what it meant to do the right thing when it cost you everything. My family was destroyed. My mother wouldn't speak to me. I'd lost cousins and aunts and uncles who believed I'd betrayed them all. But I'd also maintained my integrity. I'd refused to participate in corruption or stay silent about crimes. Sentencing came and went. The judge was harsh, calling their crimes a betrayal of trust and a corruption of legitimate business. Bradley got 18 years in federal prison. Andrew got 14. Tyler got 9. They were led away to begin their sentences, and I didn't attend the hearing. There was nothing more I needed to witness. Life moved forward. Harold promoted me again, this time to regional supervisor overseeing multiple cleaning teams across the city. The job paid well and came with benefits I'd never had before. I was good at it, managing people and ensuring quality work. Some of my employees were like I'd been a year ago. People struggling. People judged. People dismissed by a society that valued titles over character. I tried to treat them with respect. To see their value. To understand that everyone has a story, and sometimes the people doing the dirty jobs are the most honest ones you'll ever meet. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from an attorney I didn't know. It explained that my father had set up a trust before he died, one that Uncle Bradley had been managing. With Bradley now in prison, the trust had been audited and irregularities had been found. Money that should have been distributed to me and Andrew had been diverted by Bradley for years. The attorney had recovered it, and I was owed nearly $200,000 in back payments plus interest. The money was life-changing. I could have quit my job. Could have done anything. But I didn't. I kept working because I liked it. Because it was mine. Because I'd earned respect through competence rather than inheritance. I used some of the money to start a small scholarship fund for students from working-class families who wanted to pursue education but couldn't afford it. Students like I'd been once, before everything fell apart. I called it the Samuel Brennan Memorial Scholarship, after my father. It felt right to honor his memory with something good, something that helped people instead of hurting them. The rest I saved and invested carefully. No get-rich-quick schemes. No shortcuts. Just steady, honest growth. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. I adopted a dog from the shelter. I built a life that felt authentic and mine. Sometimes I thought about my family. About where they were and how they were handling prison life. Andrew would be released when he was 46 years old. Bradley would be 71. Tyler would be 43. They'd lost everything. Their freedom. Their money. Their reputation. Their future. And they blamed me for all of it, when all I'd done was refuse to help them hide their crimes. I didn't feel guilty about that. I felt sad sometimes, but not guilty. They'd made choices. Those choices had consequences. I wasn't responsible for their decisions or their suffering. I was only responsible for my own integrity and my own actions. And I'd chosen truth over loyalty to people who'd never shown me loyalty in return. Harold retired after 2 more years, and I took over his position as director of the entire cleaning company. It was a good job with real responsibility. I managed contracts and employees and budgets. I made decisions that mattered. People respected my opinion and trusted my judgment. I never heard from my mother again. I heard through distant relatives that she'd moved to another state to escape the shame and scandal. She'd never forgiven me for testifying. In her mind, family loyalty should have trumped everything else, including honesty and justice. We'd simply never agree on that, so perhaps it was better that we went our separate ways. Other relatives slowly reached out over the years. A cousin here. An aunt there. People who'd been on the periphery of the scandal and wanted to rebuild some kind of connection. I was cautious with them. Friendly but distant. I'd learned that not everyone who shares your blood deserves your trust. The company my father built was sold off in pieces to satisfy debts and legal judgments. The Brennan Holdings name disappeared completely. New owners renamed it and restructured everything. The employees who'd stayed found themselves working for an honest organization for the first time in years. Some of them reached out to thank me. They'd known something was wrong but hadn't known what to do about it. My testimony had freed them too, in a way. I thought about writing a book about the experience. About being the invisible witness who brought down his own family. About learning that dirty jobs teach you clean truths. But I decided against it. The story didn't need to be told publicly. It existed in court records and news archives for anyone interested enough to look. That was enough. 10 years after the trial, I stood in Harold's old office, now mine, looking out at the city. I was 38 years old. I ran a successful business that employed over 100 people. I'd helped put away criminals and protected innocent employees. I'd built something honest from the ashes of my family's corruption. And I'd done it all while doing work that people had once called dirty and shameful. The phone rang. It was Agent Cross, now a senior supervisor at the FBI. We'd stayed in occasional contact over the years, and she sometimes called when she needed advice on cases involving employees who might have witnessed criminal activity. I'd become something of an informal consultant on how to approach and interview workers in positions like I'd held. "Marcus," she said, "I've got a situation. A company with possible fraud issues. We think some of the maintenance staff might have seen things, but they're scared to talk. Would you be willing to meet with them? Help them understand that coming forward is the right thing." "Of course," I said. I met with 3 cleaning staff members the next week. 2 women and 1 man, all looking terrified and uncertain. I told them my story. About being mocked and dismissed. About finding evidence while doing my job. About choosing truth over family loyalty. About how hard it was, but how necessary. About how they couldn't control what happened after they told the truth, but they could control whether they told it at all. 2 of them agreed to talk to the FBI. The 3rd wasn't ready, and I didn't push. Everyone has to make their own choice about these things. But I planted a seed. Maybe it would grow eventually. Driving home that evening, I thought about the dinner table at Uncle Bradley's house a decade earlier. The laughter. The mockery. The dismissal. A dirty job, they'd called it. They'd been right, in a way. My job had involved dirt and grime and things most people avoided. But it had also given me access to truth. It had put me in a position to witness corruption and do something about it. It had taught me that value comes from integrity, not from titles or money or family name. I'd learned that people who call other people's jobs dirty usually have something to hide. They need to feel superior, need to believe that their hands are clean because they work in offices instead of basements. But corruption doesn't care where you work. It grows in boardrooms and basements equally. The difference is that people in basements usually notice it, while people in boardrooms participate in it. The scholarship fund had helped 12 students by now. Kids who worked night jobs to pay for college. Kids who understood the value of honest labor. One of them had written me a letter thanking me for giving them a chance they'd never thought they'd have. That letter sat framed on my desk, reminding me why all of this had mattered. Why speaking up had been worth losing everything. My dog, a golden retriever named Sam after my father, greeted me at the door when I got home. Simple pleasures had become my favorite things. A loyal dog. A comfortable house. Work that mattered. Friends who valued me for who I was rather than who my family had been. I'd built a life on my own terms, and it felt more valuable than anything I could have inherited. Sometimes on quiet nights, I wondered what my father would think of everything that had happened. Would he be proud that I'd protected his legacy by exposing the corruption? Or would he be heartbroken that his family had destroyed itself? I liked to think he'd understand. He'd been an honest man. He'd built something real through hard work and integrity. He wouldn't have wanted that twisted into something criminal. The years kept passing. Bradley was released from prison when he was 71, a broken old man who'd lost everything. I heard he moved to a small town somewhere and lived alone in a tiny apartment. Andrew got out at 46 and struggled to find work with a felony record. Tyler was released at 43 and moved across the country, trying to start over where nobody knew the Brennan name. None of them ever contacted me. The division was permanent. We'd chosen different paths, and those paths would never cross again. I was fine with that. Family is supposed to be about love and support and shared values, not just shared DNA. They'd never really been family to me. They'd been people who judged me and dismissed me and thought I was worthless. Losing them hadn't cost me anything I'd actually valued. I married at 40. A woman named Claire who worked as a teacher and understood what it meant to do important work that society undervalued. We had 2 children. I taught them that all honest work has dignity. That cleaning floors is just as important as signing contracts. That the measure of a person comes from their character, not their job title or bank account. My company continued to grow. We earned a reputation for excellence and integrity. Businesses trusted us because we were thorough and professional and honest. Some of our clients probably never realized that the owner had once been the janitor who'd helped bring down a corrupt real estate empire. That was fine. I didn't need recognition. I just needed to know I'd done the right thing. On the 20th anniversary of my testimony, a local business magazine ran a feature about ethical whistleblowers who'd made a difference. They interviewed me about the case and what I'd learned. I told them the truth had cost me my family but saved my integrity. I told them I'd do it again without hesitation. I told them that dirty jobs often teach the cleanest lessons about right and wrong. The article quoted me saying, "They called my job a dirty job." I didn't argue with them. I just let my work speak for itself. And in the end, that dirty job cleaned up the truth they'd been trying to hide. It was a good summary of everything I'd learned. Sometimes the people society dismisses are the ones who see most clearly. Sometimes the work people mock is the work that matters most. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what you're really made of. I'd been made of something stronger than I'd known. Something my family had never recognized because they were too busy laughing at my choices to see my character. They'd thought I was weak for taking a humble job. They'd thought I lacked ambition and pride. They'd been completely wrong. I'd had ambition. Just not for money or status or approval from people who didn't respect me. My ambition had been simpler. To do honest work. To live with integrity. To sleep at night knowing I hadn't compromised my values for comfort or acceptance. I'd achieved all of that, and more. Standing in my office 20 years later, looking out at a city that knew my company's name and trusted our work, I realized something important. They'd called my job dirty because they needed to feel superior to me. Because if they admitted my work had value, they'd have to admit I had value. And that would have forced them to examine their own choices and corruption. So they'd laughed instead. Mocked instead. Dismissed instead. And I'd let them, because their opinions had never mattered. What mattered was truth. What mattered was doing the right thing even when it cost everything. What mattered was building something real instead of inheriting something false. My job had been dirty. My hands had touched things most people avoided. But my conscience was clean. And in the end, that was the only thing that truly mattered. I'd chosen the dirty job and the clean truth over the clean job and the dirty secrets. I'd chosen right. They'd laughed first. But I'd finished last. And I'd finished with my integrity intact, which was more than any of them could say. The dirty job had taught me everything I needed to know about what really matters in life. It had given me eyes to see corruption and courage to confront it. It had made me stronger than I'd ever been in their world of offices and titles and inherited privilege. They'd called it a dirty job. I'd called it the making of who I'd become. And I wouldn't trade that for anything they'd lost. If this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to this channel for more true stories like this one. Leave a comment below, telling me what you would have done in my situation. I read every single one. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Your share might save someone's life. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I know this wasn't an easy story to hear, and I want to be honest with you, some of the stories that follow contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If that's not something you're comfortable with, feel free to explore other content that suits you better. But if you're willing to learn from real experiences, even painful ones, I'll be here sharing what I've learned. God bless you. And remember, protecting what is yours is never an option.